What we can learn about how to name a brand from Genericity. Genericity is a problem that no brand wants. However much people may think it must be flattering for Google that people use its brand name as a verb. Saying you're going to Google something or that you're Googling a particular search is damaging for Google's trademark. Far from being flattering, this could actually be disastrous for the Google business. Take aspirin as an example. It used to be a trademarked name for a type of pain relief medicine made of acetylsalicylic, some acid. Now it's synonymous with that type of painkiller because Bayer lost the battle for the name to continue as a trademark in the USA, UK and France. Nevertheless, it is still a trademark in many European countries as well as in Canada. Others have been less fortunate and have lost their trademark rights in names such as Cat's Eye, Escalator, Thermos, Walkman and Hovercraft due to genericity. Many, including Hoover, Xerox and Kleenex, have gone dangerously close to losing their marks or have lost them in certain jurisdictions. Now, what it means to become generic is that the trademark becomes synonymous with all versions of that product. In other words, consumers understand the name to be the name of the product itself, as opposed to the brand name, the identifier or exclusive source of a product. You see, the upshot is that such a trademark loses its distinctiveness and competitors are then freely able to attach what is a powerful name to their own products. The trademark dies and is buried, the victim of genericide. Given that the brand is often the most valuable asset of a company, if it gets to the stage where it no longer has that exclusivity, the brand is effectively finished and you lose the brand equity that you had built up. A dispute between Costco and Tiffany is mentioned in a BBC article that I've linked to on my blog. This arose in 2013 because Costco was selling Tiffany engagement rings. Tiffany objected, whereupon Costco retaliated, saying that the US jewelry company's trademark is no longer valid because Tiffany is now a generic term for the rings in question. It was a solitaire style comprising a diamond mounted on 6 prongs. A long drawn out battle ensued. Much was at stake because if Tiffany had lost the trademark, then one of the world's most famous ring settings would have effectively become worthless. As it happens, Tiffany won significant damages, although the damages were reduced in August recently. Preventing genericide. Now, once a mark becomes generic, it's almost impossible for it to be registered again. It will be deemed to lack distinctiveness, and then everyone will be able to use it on their products and services. So any brand in that situation must take steps to prevent genericity from eroding its value. One way to do so is to use descriptors to clearly differentiate the trademark and the product. So what they do is Xerox copier or Kleenex tissues and try and get everyone else using these terms. Google adopted this approach very effectively a few years back when it decided to launch new products under its brand name with extension descriptors. For example, Google News, Google Translate, Google Chrome, and so on. It also rebranded two of its existing services which had previously used separate product names. So Picasa became Photos, Google Photos, and Blogger became Google Blogs. By bringing more of its products under one brand name, Google changed the approach it had taken to naming hierarchy, and in doing so took a big step towards saving its trademark rights in its brand name. So the takeaway lessons from this are as follows. While genericity only arises for large household name brands that are hugely successful, what the rest of us can take away from these cases is that choosing generic descriptive names that say on the tin exactly what the business or product is all about is simply the wrong approach to naming. It never ceases to amaze me that experienced marketers who should know better don't take on board that the purpose of a brand name is to distinguish goods or services of one undertaking from those of other undertakings. The name is not the place to communicate marketing messages. This role of a brand name to be an identifying characteristic is to ensure that consumers can make buying decisions and choose products and services in the marketplace. If consumers get confused about the source or origin of goods and services, they won't be able to find the products and services they're seeking. The name is the ultimate identifier of a brand. It's its badge of origin, designating the goods or services you sell under that name. I would go so far as to say that a name that isn't capable of uniquely identifying your brand isn't fit for purpose. An effective name is one that is distinctive. There should be no similar names on the registers at all. Think of the name as the equivalent of a plot of land on which you're going to build, your brand, like building property. It's effectively the brand name that you will then have brand associations to. If you own a secure plot of land in a desirable location, the properties you build on the land will be more valuable. Well, a similar thing happens when you build a brand. Using a generic descriptive name is to actually opt for a weak name from an intellectual property perspective. It's one of the most important choices you make for your brand. So making a good choice is not just about whether you like the sound of a name, but also whether the name is strong from an intellectual property point of view. If it's weak, then it's the equivalent of choosing a poor plot, somewhere in a poor location, one that people can easily break into and which makes you vulnerable to theft, to trespassers. So you would, in the same way, have theft of your market share. It will be extremely expensive to enforce your rights against competitors, and you will lose some of the business that would otherwise have come to you because other businesses will be using similar generic names and they'll be confused for you and you won't be able to do anything to put a stop to them. You are effectively going to be devoting some of your marketing budget to propping up competitors when you opt for a generic name for your brand. That's why I'm really surprised that so many branding agencies choose names without reference to lawyers. A lawyer experienced in trademarks and brand protection brings a perspective into the naming process that is essential before finalizing a name choice. A lawyer's role goes beyond simply checking availability and registering a name. You will have other identifiers, of course, such as your logo, type of font, your tagline, colours, icons, and so on to play with, as well as your communications. But the name is the anchor to which these other identifiers are attached and needs to be unique and distinctive. Jenny Romaniak's book, Building Distinctive Brand Assets, also distinguishes between the brand name and other identifiers because the name has this anchoring significance. Distinctive brand assets are going to call to mind the name. So consider how you decide what to buy and how brands come into your consideration. You see, we search our memory for something to buy, for the situation we find ourselves in. Say you're thirsty and decide you want to buy a soft drink. If you decide you want a Coca-Cola or a Pepsi, it's the name you think of first and foremost. You may remember the designs and logos, but it's primarily the name that evokes the product. In conclusion, choose a name because you like the sound of it, but there is no need to describe your offering in that